Be interesting. Now, this is a really big point I like to drum into the students, is that if you're an interesting person, every person is interesting. And the thing is, by putting out things there that are yours, what can you do? I mean, write stories that are interesting to you, to basically to push your own boundaries. I mean, if you were to read 100 similar stories, what would make yours stand out? And that's the thing. Think of it this way. A teacher or a marker who is marking your story would be reading 100 of them. So what about your story is going to stand out for them? Now, if you think, well, it's got a great big twist at the end, a lot of stories are going to have great big twists at the end. A lot of them are going to be formulaic and all those things. What makes yours stand out, though? What about you is in there? What is interesting about your story? That's what you've got to think about when you're writing it, when you're putting it together. Now, when I say be showy, which is the next sort of tip that I've got, I don't mean as in you have to be necessarily flashy, but you express the world as you see it, not how you see it on TV. Now, what I mean by that is you don't basically go through with a narrow focus like you would in a TV show where they do this thing and then they do this thing and then they do this thing and then they do this thing. What you do instead is you describe a whole heap of different things, and you sort of open up the world a little bit for your characters, for your audience to explore it, and then they'll focus mainly on the key details. Now, this takes a little bit of explaining. So basically, what I'll say it as is you describe what happens rather than use telling language such as he did this and he did that and she did that. All right. Now, obviously, I wouldn't expect your writing to be as simple as he did this and she did that. But a lot of writing is still somewhat like that, where everything, the things that they feel, the things that they see, the things that they interact with are all fairly heavily explained. And that's basically the same as saying he did this and she did that, and trying to enable the audience to get everything. If you just describe it in a way that the audience may not necessarily get it, then that's not such a bad thing, because it allows whoever's reading it to put their own interpretation on it. As long as you don't make it utterly confusing and absolutely meaningless. If you write in such a way where it doesn't really matter if people can get it or not, it doesn't matter too much, because that's where people's interpretation come in, and don't rule out the fact that your teacher can interpret things, because they will. They have to interpret texts virtually on a daily basis when they teach you. So when they're marking things, they're going to be able to interpret the work that you submit to them, provided, of course, that it does have some sort of a story structure and it does make some sense. But the rest you can describe it however you want. You can tell a story entirely through description, and as I said, allow your reader to pick up the trail. So instead of saying she ran away, you could just basically say footsteps pounded the corridor for 2 straight laps, or something along those lines, where you can allow the reader to pick up, okay, she's running. So these sorts of things can be sort of done just through purely description and through descriptive exercises, not necessarily through just going out and explaining it all. Now, it doesn't require any creativity either, just a very good eye for detail. So if you're one of those people who has a really good eye for detail and can spot things, use those details. Use certain habits that people have as a way of explaining them. So I don't look at people as such. I look at people by their habits. So immediately, if they flip a coin through their fingers or something, or if they have a particular way of saying a word, those are more interesting descriptions of a character than blonde hair, blue eyes, black t-shirt. And they certainly add more to the character than those descriptions. So think of it that way.